Welcome to CWS Christian Writing and Speaking. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson, and today's guest is a singer, songwriter, speaker, and advocate. She has served as a missionary planting churches for 13 years while enduring abuse that was enabled by the church. 10 years ago, she started her ministry, DSW Ministries, and now she uses her music to help survivors in the church heal from domestic violence, abuse, and trauma. She is the host of the Wounds of the Faithful podcast and is a certified facilitator for Men in the Soul small groups. She is passionate about helping victims discover that not only can you survive, but you can be victorious. Please welcome to the CWS stage, Miss Diana Winkler.
Thanks
I'm
for having me today.
yes, I'm so excited and I'm very interested in hearing your story and how you are helping people become victorious after they have become a victim.
I am glad to tell my story. And I knew there was something wrong. I knew that I was miserable and I was being mistreated, but I didn't realize I was being abused until my friends told me.
And what was your
Because,
idea of abuse before your friends mentioned that you were being abused?
well, my husband never hit me. See, the church says to us, well, if he didn't hit you, it's not really abuse. You have to stay. So he never hit me, but he made my life a living hell without laying a finger on me. And it wasn't until my friends told me that he is abusing you and you need to get out. And I would say, I can't get out because they won't let me get a divorce. They tell me divorce is a sin. And it wasn't until my friend pointed out to me, you know, God's not going to stop loving you. Nothing separates you from the love of God. Even your abusive husband. Yeah, I didn't know what narcissism was. I didn't know what gaslighting was. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. All I knew is I was miserable. The church was teaching that women are subservient to men. Women don't have any rights of their own except what their husband gives them and what their church gives them. And so I was trying to be a good missionary wife. I was trying to serve in the church. And I'm trying to pretend that nothing is wrong, that I have it all together. You know what I mean? Um, but you can only do that for so long until, you know, what hits the fan. You
Yeah.
just can't take it anymore.
And what are some of the things that he was doing to you?
Well, it's the abuse started on our honeymoon, and there was some red flags when we were dating, like him losing his temper and talking and calling me names and that sort of stuff. His favorite thing was to storm out of the house and run around the block in his car whenever we had a fight, whatever it was about. So the abuse that I noticed started during the honeymoon, that, hey, you go on your honeymoon to get to know each other physically and have sex, and he did not want to have sex. And neither of us were virgins, being transparent here. Neither of us were virgins, but we saved ourselves. We didn't have sex before we got together and got married. Um, so I was pointing out some things about my body, and he didn't want to hear that. He was the man, and he was the one that's supposed to be um, doing all of the button pushing, so to speak. I'm trying to keep it PG here. And, you know, he got really angry with me, and I didn't say anything bad, like, your manhood isn't big enough or whatever. It was nothing like that. It was just us trying to get to know each other and learn what our bodies were supposed to do. And he got really offended and upset, and he got into the car, and we were in a bed and breakfast in Virginia somewhere, and he just left. And at that time it was like, I just made a mistake in marrying this man, and I can't believe that I didn't see it before. But he was an abuser, and I'm waiting for him to come back, and I didn't know if he was going to come back. And then I'm praying to the Lord, what do I do? And I decided, I'm going to make lemonade out of lemons. I'm going to try and be the best wife that I can and honor my vows. And maybe it will get better. Maybe he's just under a lot of stress. Maybe he's, you're making all kinds of excuses in your head. Maybe I wasn't sensitive enough just now. Maybe this, maybe that. Well, he did come back, by the way. He just, it was probably an hour and a half. He just came back, and yeah, it wasn't a very good honeymoon. And then we went back home. We moved into the apartment, and we were both in Bible college, and it didn't get any better. It just got worse. So that's where it started, at least where I noticed that, okay, there's something wrong here, and I'm in big trouble.
So, how long did it take for you to come to the conclusion that you needed to leave? Or when did you start making preparations to leave?
Oh, that was 13 years. It's 13 years. The 13th anniversary, it was horrible. We were trying to be intimate. That's what is expected. And all the abuse of the 13 years and trying to attempt intimacy when through our entire marriage, he would use intimacy as a weapon against me and not want to do anything with me. We collided heads physically, literally. I zigged instead of zagged, and so we're both angry and in pain, and all the stuff just piled on, and we just like, forget it, just go to bed. So cried myself to sleep like I usually do. And the next day I called my girlfriend up, the one I mentioned, and said, I had a really bad anniversary last night, and told her everything that happened. And she was like, I'm so tired of you calling me and telling me about this abusive man. I'm sick of this. You need to get out of there. You need to get out of that house. And I said, I can't. I'm trapped in this marriage. The church is very clear. You cannot divorce your husband. It's a sin. And I'm trapped. She said, she was married 3 times. She's been divorced 3 times. She said, God's not going to stop loving you because you leave your husband that's abusing you. You need to get out of there. This is going to destroy you. And I didn't really realize that this was abuse with an A. It wasn't a normal marriage. This isn't what you're supposed to put up with. And she said that, who cares what the church says? So it was that day. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. You're right. My eyes are open. So I decided I'm going to make preparations to leave. And I knew that he wouldn't let me leave. So I I had to hide it from him. I had to find a phone in my own name. I had to save up money. I had a job at the time and I kind of squirreled away money and started to look for apartments and all that stuff because he was going out of town in 2 weeks. And I decided that I was going to move out when he went out of town. And I didn't sleep for all that time waiting because I had to hide that anything was wrong, pretend everything was normal, and get out there and make plans to leave. And I thought, oh, I hope he doesn't find out because otherwise this thing is all going to come crumbling down. And I go to church and do all my church service and again pretend that everything is fine and put on this big mask that, hey, um, I'm super Christian. I'm a
Mhm.
perfect missionary's wife. And it almost didn't happen that I left because I lost my job right before I was putting him on the plane. And I freaked out and I called my other friend, Julie. And I said, I lost my job, Julie. What am I going to do? I'm supposed to be leaving soon. She said, well, you have to get out now because you're not going to have any opportunities ever again, at least not for a long time. So she said, you can live with me and my family. I said, okay. So the day came, I was terrified, but I put him on the plane. I went to the lawyer's office, signed the paperwork for filing for divorce, and then went back to the house to load everything in the storage unit. And then I went over to my girlfriend's house. Uh, that was it was terrifying because he found out that I was leaving. I FedExed him the divorce papers at his parents' house. So he all of a sudden, wanted marriage counseling. Well, no, I dragged you to marriage counseling 3 times and you wouldn't cooperate. You'd sit there with your arms folded and say, uh, I don't want you telling me what to do. I'm not a sinner. The problems are all your fault. You don't submit to me, all that stuff. And I told you there'll be a day when it'll be too late for marriage counseling, and that day is today. And the pastor that we were serving under emailed me and said, uh, I want to have you come in for marriage counseling and see if I can help you in any way. And I said, preacher, I'm going to tell you that I'm going through with this divorce. I am not going to do this any longer. I can't. So we'll just come to the session and that's all I ask. So I came as a favor to him. And of course my husband was sitting there and he was crying and said he was sorry and I said, I forgive you, but I don't really believe that you're going to change. Because when we started talking about the marriage issues with the pastor, it was the same song and dance. Well, you didn't submit and you this and you that. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm going through with the divorce. I don't wish you any ill. I don't wish any revenge on you. I just want out. And I got up and left, and yeah, we were divorced within 6 months. I just left him everything. I just took my personal belongings and my car that was in my name, and he got the house, the dogs, the fancy car, all the furniture in the house, and I got out and I started my new life. So uh, that's the short version.
Yeah, and I definitely want to hear more about what you did after you left because you play music, you're a musician, and you also started a ministry. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. When I got out of the abusive relationship, I looked and realized what I had gone through, and I was trying to heal from all of that abuse. And I did not know anybody that had been a minister's wife that had gone through abuse like me. Now I know that it's a very common thing. It's just hidden and under the rug. I did get some counseling. I did find a church who loved me the way I was, accepted me for who I am. And I had some counseling with him. I went through divorce care. And I wanted to start a ministry for abuse survivors like myself, like a Bible study for survivors, but the the door was closed all the time. People don't want to deal with abuse. It's not a sexy topic. It's not comfortable to talk about abuse. And so the doors were closed for a long time. But one of the things that my ex-husband would not let me do, because I had been a musician my whole life since I was in kindergarten. I sang and took piano lessons and then took formal vocal training in college and started songwriting. My ex-husband was a record producer before we met. And that's kind of how we met, was me singing a solo in church. And it was his idea to, oh, hey, you got a great voice. You should record an album. We had a recording studio in our house. But he would do everybody else's album, but he would never do mine. And that was a way of controlling me, because abuse is not hitting, it's control. And so every year he'd ask me what I'd want for Christmas or my birthday, and I would always say I want to record my album. And it never would happen. He would say, oh, who would listen to you? You were just, you're nothing. Who would want to listen to you with your voice and your piano? And I said, well, a lot of people in church are always asking when I'm going to record and release this album. And it was that way for many years. And the first thing that I did when I got out was I found a studio and I recorded that album within 6 months. That was a big deal for me. And some people thought it was, oh, you went out and recorded this for spite. And I said, oh, you got that right. I did do it out of spite, because music is part of me. It's part of the way I worship. I have a message to give to the world, and the Lord blessed me with gifts, and I believe he wants me to use those gifts for him. And so, yes, I went and I recorded the first album, and I started doing more songwriting about my experience and writing songs for survivors. Like my first song that I wrote about abuse is called Break These Chains. And the first verse is all about my story. The second verse is somebody else's story. The third verse is about the church enabling the abuse. And it's kind of one of those songs that steps on your toes. It has a happy ending, but it's not one of those you play on the radio and it's a feel good, happy song. It's right between the eyes kind of a song. But that's my message. That's the kind of place where I'm at. And I did not really heal well enough until I met my now husband, Brian. We met 2 years after my divorce, and he was a survivor too. And he's a musician just like me. and we started writing music together, and joined bands and started playing out in public, and we bought recording equipment, and we have a studio in our house too. So we were looking for a church to serve together in, and it wasn't until we joined the church we're at now that I found Mending the Soul. And Mending the Soul is a healing group for survivors, and it's a curriculum that's designed by a trauma counselor as well as a theology and ethics professor. And they've created this curriculum on how to heal from abuse, and it's psychologically and spiritually sound, biblically sound. So when I joined this church, the pastor's wife, I asked her if I could start a Bible study and for abuse survivors, and she said, "You know what? We already have something like that. Have you heard of Mending the Soul?" And I said, "No." So she invited me to be in a group, which is 16 weeks long, and that's where we process all kinds of trauma, and we learn how God sees us and how to not only process the trauma but prevent it from happening in the future. Recognize who is an abuser, what does an abuser look like, what does the Bible say about abuse. I went through that, and it was so revolutionary for me, and it changed my life. I had done some healing before, but there were definitely some corners and closets that were not cleaned out yet. Mm-hmm. And I was so impressed with Mending the Soul that I went and I trained to facilitate my own groups. So that's something I've done for the last 5 years. And it has changed so many lives. God has really used that. I've never seen anything like it. And my husband and I were in the middle of doing a new album. It's a healing album. So we'll have some of my original music about abuse and healing, and then some cover songs that some songs that I really love that other people do are going to be on there. It's a concept album, the journey of healing. And so that's a project I'm working on now. I have been releasing some of the new songs on my website as I'm going. I hope to be finished with it next year, but everybody's gone through the pandemic, right? And so that's a huge pivot for me, because we were all doing our performing with our bands, and I was doing many the soul groups at church, and then the pandemic started. So not only did I not have a band to go out and perform with, I didn't have anybody to record with. My husband's a drummer. He doesn't play guitar or anything. He sings, does a little bit of bass, but I'm primarily a piano player and a singer. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? I don't have any public performances that I can do by myself, and I can't meet with the band. So my husband was pointing out to me, and he goes, because I have 2 digital pianos. My husband says, "You got to buy this Roland Juno synthesizer. It's like a band in a box." And you can do everything on this thing. It's in front of me here as we're speaking. You can, it's got a drum kit. It's got every instrument you can think of. It's got recording. You have vocal effects. It's got everything on there. And so I went and bought this so I could create music right here by myself. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's got so many bells and whistles on it, but the other parts of my ministry was starting the podcast. That started because the girls in my group, and by the way, the Mending the Soul is for men and for women separately in groups, but I only do women's groups. The ladies were in lockdown with their abuser, and they had no time to themselves except the 2 hours with us in our group in Mending the Soul. And a lot of times we would go over the 16 weeks because they needed it. They needed some personal time. And when it was over, they needed more resources. So I started working from home. I'm in healthcare, and I was listening to podcasts. It's like, well, wow, I could do a podcast. I like talking. I like, I like sharing my story. I like people. I know a lot of people. I have resources. I already have the recording equipment. So I decided I'm going to start a podcast. And I'm at 84 episodes. And mine is specifically to help Christians heal from abuse. I also help people to transition out of an abusive situation. What do you do after you get out? Or I don't know how to get out. I need help getting out of this abusive situation. And so I mentor people on how to do that. God is good. He's brought me so far from where I was. And I know that, healing is not instantaneous. It takes a long time to get past a lot of the pain. We're not going to be 100% healed until we get to the other side of the eternity here.
But your story is a story of hope. Definitely for those who may be listening right now and trying to figure out what can I do. And the steps that you took was amazing. It was so brave, just courageous to say, despite what's happening here at home, I'm going to take the steps necessary little by little because I know there's better for me. And I that gives people hope. And I'm thankful that you were able to get out of it and that it did not destroy you completely. And now that you are not only on your own healing journey, but you're also helping other people heal. And I think that is to be commended. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Please tell people how they can connect with you and your ministry work.
Yes, reach out to me, you guys, if you need any help whatsoever. I'm here for you. You can find everything about me on dswministries.org. You can find my podcast, my music, my store, Mending the Soul. I'll help you find a group in your area. If you need mentoring, like I mentioned. And I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Thank you so much. CWS audience, you've heard her powerful story. And if you are facing this situation right now, you can get out. There is hope. And if you need somebody to help you, please connect with her. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And until next time, beautiful people, God bless.